Hey, welcome to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore, and this is Andrew Kramer. We're going to break down the Vikings' loss to the Detroit Lions. The Vikings still winless in the division, but obviously showed some pretty good fight in the Detroit game. A lot of what-ifs from this game. We'll talk about three different situations here, and then we'll get to all this on the Purple podcast, too, in a bit longer form. So if you enjoy any of the insights from this video, make sure to check out that podcast on 1500ESPN.com. We'll talk a lot about those what-if moments, kind of a lot of opportunities wasted for the Vikings on Sunday. And also talk about Teddy Bridgewater, who was very strong, but 2 interceptions at the end of the first half really cost the Vikings. And finally, we'll get into Xavier Rhodes, shadowing for the first time in his career. The Vikings basically assigned him to the Lions' top threat, Calvin Johnson. We'll talk about how he did. But first, Andrew, I want to start with those missed opportunities, really, that kind of defined the game for the Vikings, defined the loss. What did you think about the totality of work of the performance compared with just the fact that they couldn't pull it off in the end?
Yeah, I really was not expecting Detroit to be so neutered on offense. I mean, I knew they had Calvin Johnson back, Reggie Bush in the backfield, but really they couldn't get anything done against the Vikings defense. I don't think they got a first down in the first quarter.
Yeah.
They went with 3 3-and-outs, I believe, to start the game. The Vikings looked like they were on top of it. They were taking away the underneath screens. They were moving Xavier Rhodes around with Calvin Johnson, which really, not only did that stifle what they were trying to do with Calvin Johnson, that also hurt their screen game because Calvin is their best blocker. And then when you put a big body like Rhodes against him, because think about it, if you put Josh Robinson on Calvin Johnson and try to throw a screen to Golden Tate, right. Josh Robinson's blocked out of that play. He's a non-factor. Mm-hmm. Xavier Rhodes was stifling their screen game by blocking and fighting through Calvin's blocks and really becoming a factor in that facet of it. So that helped them stifle really a Detroit offense that I thought was going to be able to move the ball up and down the field today. And they didn't do it.
Right.
But they had a few chances to try and come away with this one. Blair Walsh misses 3 field goals. Teddy Bridgewater throws those 2 picks that turn into 10 points for Detroit. All in all, they didn't do enough to win the game, although they played a lot better than I was expecting.
Now, one of those was a desperation kick at the end of regulation from 68 yards, which you're not exactly expecting Blair Walsh to make. The other one blocked. So statistically a pretty bad game for Blair Walsh. Of course, I don't think he played quite as bad as the box score shows.
No, I would agree with you on there. I mean, the one you got to wonder, though, on that 28-yarder that was blocked, you got to wonder how much of that's on him, though, because you are taught as a kicker that when those kicks are short to kick it up because you don't need to kick it as far. So that one looked a little low to me. Jason Jones, who got a sack, I believe, on Mike Harris that led to that field goal, comes back on the next play and then blocks the field goal. I believe Jamarcus Webb was the one who was blocking him, even though I think Blair Walsh now, who's 1 for 6 in the last 2 games, you still got to put a lot on him for not getting those kicks high enough and then obviously missing that 53-yarder at the beginning of the game.
Bridgewater, you touched on the interceptions. Let's dig a little bit more into his performance. It really looked surgical for him in the first quarter. At the beginning of the first half, all of a sudden, 2 picks, and it's a different story. What did you think about Bridgewater's overall performance today compared to the last time they played Detroit when he took 8 sacks?
That's night and day. I mean, we were going from, I believe, which was his first career NFL start to now his 10th career NFL start. It was night and day for him. He started.
That have been his second in Detroit?
Either way, one of his first 2 starts. He went 15 for 18 now to start this game for 168 yards and a touchdown. And then he had to throw those 2 picks on back-to-back plays in the first half that led to 10 Detroit points, which really won them the game because obviously the defense held them to 2 field goals in the second half, and that was all Detroit could muster. So if Bridgewater doesn't throw those 2 picks, one of which was a terrible throw to Greg Jennings, he was late on an out route. If he just throws that outside, it's incomplete, and you come back for the next play. Instead, it's an interception, and Detroit marches down and kicks a field goal to bring it within a score before halftime.
The other one was Charles Johnson, where he sort of tripped. It looked like the throw was a little bit high, but as I kind of said to you during the game, I thought that Johnson at least could have got a hand on it if he hadn't stumbled.
That was an issue where Charles Johnson, Mike Zimmer said this post-game too, Charles got jammed up and really couldn't get much separation, and the throw was high. Teddy admitted that as well. So it's one of these situations, again, where you've got these inconsistencies coming from a rookie. You have to expect that. You're just hoping, if you're the Vikings, that those little blips and blemishes on his radar don't cost you, and today they did.
Yeah, I think overall body of work, though, Andrew, as you touched on at the beginning, a night and day from his first performance.
It really was.
You saw a quarterback performance today, a guy that looked like he belongs in the NFL.
Yeah, we're not talking enough about what the offensive line did today. With 3 replacements on there, they really quieted Ndamukong Suh and Ziggy Ansah. Matt Khalil, we didn't call his name much, save for 1 sack, I believe, and then 1 flag in the second half. He did really well against Ziggy Ansah, and give credit to Norv Turner. Norv Turner called up a game that really changed up the blocking schemes. It didn't always put Khalil on Ansah. There was a couple times where you had Rhett Ellison, Matt Asiata, or Ben Tate doubling him. There was a lot of plays a lot of play calls that were advantageous to Bridgewater, getting him out of the pocket, getting him out in space where he can have room to work with and wasn't suffocated in that pocket. That was also different from the first time they played Detroit. The first time they tried to sit him in the pocket more. This time they realized, one, they're not going to let that mistake happen again, but two, they have a bunch of backups playing, so now you really have to move him. And even when they did have the four-man rush set up to come at the Vikings and form a pocket, the 5 linemen did a decent job, save for a few blemishes here and there.
Sure. Changing gears here, Xavier Rhodes, number 29, Andrew. We can't say enough about this guy. Really coming on in his second year out of Florida State, and for the first time in his career was challenged to shadow a top receiver. Zimmer apparently said he called him earlier this week and said, I need you to go with 81. I think Rhodes, did a very good job of that. Johnson finished with 4 catches for 53 yards. They moved him into the slot from time to time, as Detroit will do every once in a while. It seemed to me like they were kind of trying to get him away from Xavier Rhodes, and that speaks volumes to his development.
Yeah, I mean, it was part of the game plan, but it was part of the coverage as well. Matthew Stafford was limited to 5.5 yards per throw, which is by far one of his lowest of the season. He could not get the ball downfield even when he wanted to target Calvin Johnson because Rhodes was all over him. Mm-hmm. I wasn't expecting it to happen. I didn't think Mike Zimmer wanted to pull Xavier Rhodes out of his comfort zone like that, but give Mike Zimmer credit. He realized what happens when you don't do that, as what happened in Chicago at Soldier Field when they threw all over Josh Robinson. I'm sure Matthew Stafford going into this game thought he was going to have a chance to throw all over Josh Robinson, and he didn't because Xavier Rhodes was shadowing Calvin all day.
Yeah, pretty impressive game for number 29, and I think the defense overall, something like, I want to get this right, the first downs, was it 21-11 favoring the Vikings?
It was.
And then total yards, 360 to 233 too. It looked really like a domination on the score sheet.
And on third downs too, Detroit was just 2 for 11. They couldn't get anything going, but really it was a 10-play, 65-yard drive in the fourth quarter where Matt Prater kicked a 33-yard field goal that sealed their fate.
Yep, and at the end of the day, don't come up with a win. So you can say all you want about these moral victories and things playing well. Ultimately, they lost. Interesting developments, though, for the Vikings. I thought they played really well against the Detroit Lions today, just didn't do quite enough to win. Let's talk more about that on the Purple Podcast, huh?
Let's do it. It sounds like a plan.
For Andrew Kramer, I'm Derek Wetmore. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to check out the Purple Podcast. We'll catch you next time.